All right. Well, listen, while President Bush is in Europe, let's talk about him. He is over there, and some people have said that the perception of the Europeans of this president is not that high. And this, quoted in the New York Times, a senior administration official said, the common European perception of him is of a shallow, arrogant, gun-loving, abortion-hating, Christian fundamentalist Texan buffoon.
His dad said that.
In 1993, Bill Maher launched Politically Incorrect on Comedy Central. It presented a unique blend of a late-night talk show and a Sunday morning news program. Bill himself has called the show the McLaughlin Group on acid. Politically Incorrect's irreverent take on the news struck a chord with audiences. Since 1997, it has followed Nightline on ABC.
Hillary Clinton is co-sponsoring a bill in the United States Senate to end cockfighting. This is true. This is no new issue for Hillary. She has had first-hand experience about how much trouble one pecker can cause. I think that...
Politically Incorrect is currently airing a week of mob-themed programs. I'm pleased to welcome Bill Maher back to this table. Welcome back.
Charlie, of all the clips you could have picked,
I know, it's unbelievable.
A cheap way to get smut onto your classy program.
And I'm not sure it'll make air, I promise you. But it was. And not only that, the person who chose it.
Right.
It should be fessing up.
That says something.
Yeah. So what do you think about, first of all, let's just talk about politics. The aforementioned Bill Clinton is now taking up office residence in Harlem.
Did you see it on the news? It's fantastic.
Don't you love it?
I think it's great. I always thought he belonged there. It reminds me of, he's like a war criminal. Yeah. You know how, like in Serbia?
No, I didn't.
Well, like in Serbia.
You got to hide in Serbia.
But you got to hide in the one redoubt of the country where you are most beloved.
Right.
I mean, when Karajdik and those people go into hiding, they go into Pali or one of those cities where they are absolutely... I mean, Clinton has got to go to Harlem, the one place he knows the Republicans are afraid to go, and Hillary's afraid to go.
Yes, and he'll be safe, and there'll be an early warning.
And he can compare notes with the crack addicts on stealing furniture. I get him. I love him.
You do love him.
Oh, of course. I mean,
because?
Well, I thought he was a highly effective president.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone having been a more vociferous defender of him during impeachment. Now, I've had policy disagreements. I'm not a big spending Democrat.
You are, in fact, a libertarian.
Yeah, that's right. Right. So we have disagreements about, over the years, I say disagreements like we talked about them, but, I would take him to task on my show for things I didn't agree with. Yeah. But as far as just as a president, I thought he did a fabulous job. Yeah. And what he went through with that impeachment made me angry every night, and I didn't hold back in saying so.
Now, have you always loved politics, or was this a late coming for you?
Yeah, I did. My father was a news guy. My father was a radio news reader and editor, and in those days you wrote your own newscasts on the old. I remember, if you remember, I'm sure the Mutual Broadcasting.
I do.
Mutual. Yeah. He was in the era of that kind of the staff announcer. This guy.
I do that. I know.
I remember he took me to the office once. Kids want to see their dad's office once when I was about 7 or 8, and every one of his colleagues came up to me and, "Hello, young man." It scared the hell out of it.
They were great voices, too, yeah.
Bob Beecroft, young man.
Coming from way down here.
Who are these people, Daddy? They're all yelling at me. They weren't yelling, but...
They've got those jungle voices.
Yeah. But that was that era.
But did you think about journalism at all? For a brief shining moment?
Yeah, not really journalism, per se. I mean, this is as close as I'm getting to journalism. It's just that... journalism itself in this country has fallen to such a low state that even someone like me with no training and really no aspirations for it
can have a prestigious program.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, but it seems to me that this is the perfect show for you. I mean, some of us are lucky. This is the right show for me.
Right.
Koppel has the right show for him. You have the right show for you.
Yeah, you got to invent your own show. I mean, no one can do that for you.
No one can say, I've constructed this show.
Right.
And you're the guy.
Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes people say to me, who else did you audition against for that show? That's pretty much up against myself there.
Yes, since I created it.
Yeah, no one else. And it is a good niche for me because, it's a comedian show that has a live audience and it gets lots of laughs. But I also have to talk to people about serious things. I like doing that. Some people that you have on. I have on.
Yeah.
And they mix it up too. So I have to be able to do both, and I feel sort of protected because there aren't a lot of people who know the news like I do because of my background with my father, who are comedians. And there are not a lot of comedians who, you know, the two things is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Combined, and there's not a lot of people who straddle those worlds. I was just lucky.
Who's a perfect guest?
Someone who is smart. I mean, the hat trick would be smart, funny and famous.
Yeah,
because
right.
that satisfies all my masters. You
that's
know,
a 10.
the network loves the
yeah.
fame, and people are flipping around at that hour.
Yeah.
see it's great if
They
someone has
see a face there, they'll go.
see a face that they want to stop for, and if they're pretty, oh, that's really
Is
over
that
the
why you have
moon.
so many women on the program?
Actually, I wish we had more. We have less than half, and for that I am often criticized by women, and I tell them, you know, I would love to have 4 women there every night. I love women.
So would I. Yeah, I mean, we have the same criticism. I mean, people say, "Why don't you have more women?" And we, you know, you constantly and the staff.
And what is your
the
answer?
staff is 90% women.
So is mine.
You know,
women
and you say, they run the show, and you ask yourself, I don't know. I mean,
but I know.
I know.
They just don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that women
Go ahead.
are less interested in public affairs. Now, there's women.
Oh no, there's another answer, but
But there's women right now who are saying that's not true. Yes, of course, all the women saying I'm interested. I understand that. I'm talking about if you talk about the whole country and all the women in it. No, traditionally women are interested in, you know, the men would go into the living room and have brandy and cigars and talk about politics, and the women would go in the kitchen and talk about families.
There's one great story about that before you go. Kay Graham, as you all know, died and was at a service on Monday in Washington. And a week attended. And one of the things that she did, which was her first kind of announcement that she was going to be different, is that Joe Alsop used to have all these dinners, and they'd have all the people over, and then the men would retire to one room and the women to the other.
Right.
Kay Graham said, if you want me to go in there, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden things changed.
Yeah, and things are changing, and women are, you know, slowly more interested in this. But it's still not 50-50, and that's why it's reflected in the show, why it's still not 50%. But of course, I always also fight with the idea that everything has to be 50-50. Men and women are just better and different at different things, and why can't we just choose what we want to do and let the chips fall where they may?
Here's
Am I boring you, Charlie?
No.
You're getting out the paper.
Well, that's just...
It's like we're married.
There was a column I wanted to read.
We're at the breakfast table, and he brings out the paper.
Well, there was a column I wanted to
Honey,
read.
I'm speaking,
and
you're reading.
I hadn't had time to read this. And I can listen and read at the same time, if that's okay.
Wow.
You know, we're multi-talented
You're
on
like
this
Albert
program.
Brooks in broadcast news. You can
That's right.
sing and
Yeah, exactly.
read at the
No,
same
here's my
time.
point. Look at these
Yes.
stories. White House says the U.S. is not alone or just choosy. That's really about State Department audiences discover frugality. A lot of the stories, Valone, you know, involve men. I mean, Clinton in Harlem, you know, school benefit. We ought to do better, you know, but a lot of the things, I'm doing programs about stem cell research, and so you, for example, and I'm sure you are too.
Right.
You are, I'm sure, the political dimension of that.
we've done a few of those.
And so you look at, you say, well, who are the best people to talk about this? And you don't just say, good, find me the best man to talk about this. You say, go out and find them. You know?
That's right.
Now, what we have to be, I think, vigilant about is making sure that we're searching out, because there are a lot of good people who haven't gotten the same attention as the men.
Right. But I mean,
it's driven by story.
I have always defined political correctness as the elevation of sensitivity over truth.
Yes.
And I think that's really what it comes down to a lot of the time. And for example, the truth is women very often complain about, you know, why don't we have a woman president? Why are there only 13 women senators out of 100? And I always say, well, you know, when women get the vote, that's going to change. Because, you know, if you want them, vote them. You are more than half the population.
Exactly right.
So I don't know, why don't we have a woman president? Because you don't vote for one. I mean, that's the dirty secret of politics, is that women don't vote for women in the numbers that they would like.
Yeah, and there was a woman running for the presidency in the Republican Party.
Elizabeth Dole?
Elizabeth Dole. Yeah.
Well,
what?
She's not my favorite.
Why not?
Well, because she, first of all, seems totally programmed.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all soulless.
Well, we know a bunch of people at program.
I was going to say, they're all soulless automatons, but she really takes the cake. Yeah. She also started the campaign, if you recall, by saying, I'm not a politician. And, you know, I know they're going to lie, but when you start it with the very first words out of your mouth, a huge lie like that, it just bugs me.
It's like you opening your program saying, I'm not in entertainment.
Exactly. You
I'm
know
not
what
an entertainer, but...
You know what else bothered me about that? You mentioned these mafia shows that are
Yeah.
on this week. And one of the points I was raising was that the government is also a mafia.
Yeah.
And they operate that way. Elizabeth Dole, good example. And this is points up the hypocrisy of the Republican Party in some of these areas about government. When she was transportation secretary under Reagan, I think it was?
Yes.
Okay. She wanted to make points with soccer moms for some future run for the presidency, I assume. So she's the one who got the drinking age lifted to 21.
Right.
It was 18 in a lot of states. And, of course, the Bush kids are the ones who are paying for this now because they're not going to wait till 21,
No,
God bless them.
Certainly not at the University of
Certainly
Texas.
not anywhere. Yeah, right, not in Texas. So, and she did this. She raised the drinking age in every state by basically threatening the states that if they didn't raise that age to 21, she was going to withhold that federal highway money, which is a lot of money for those states. And, of course, they all did it. And if that's not a strong-arm mafia, it'd be a shame if something happened to that highway funding. Right? I mean, that's...
Yes.
And isn't the Republican Party the one that says the federal government is the enemy and states' rights and we don't want that big federal bully? Is there anything more bullying than that? Do it my way or you don't get your highway funding.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Not my
Who's your favorite Republican?
I like,
McCain.
Yeah, I like John McCain. What, you said it like, oh, what a cliche.
Exactly. That's what it is. I mean, he deserves our approval, but because of A, his independence, B, his extraordinary personal story.
Yeah.
You know, but he's everybody's favorite.
Well, then why doesn't he win? Is a good point.
Well,
Why?
because everybody you and I know is not a majority.
Yeah, right.
But most of journalists, he would be the favorite, by far.
Yeah. Well, he does.
Favorite Democrat or Republican.
Right. Well, he does talk straighter. He's also on the right side of issues that are important to me.
Like?
Campaign finance,
Right.
number one. I always
Is that where do you put that on your priority? Campaign finance reform.
right at the top.
Because
because everything follows from that.
Or it cuts through everything.
Every issue is subsumed by that because there's not an issue that isn't affected by money.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, ending the drug war is a big issue with me too, but that's not going to change before the campaign finance changes, because, you know, liquor and prescription drugs, they pay their money to make sure that some drugs are demonized and others aren't. But, you know, McCain and Bush always remind, I don't know if you saw the movie Gladiator.
Of course I did.
Okay. That is McCain and Bush. I mean,
Which one?
well, I mean, McCain
Russell Crowe is McCain.
The war hero.
Yeah.
You know, strong,
and Bush
brave,
is the little wimpy
emperor's
son?
son.
Oh, come on.
He's
George-
the emperor's son who got the job, and it really should have been the war hero.
Hello, he's been in the toughest. I'm not an apologist for George Bush, but George Bush had a big name, but he won election in Texas, first of all.
He was in public service.
Twice he won election.
6 years.
Governor, twice.
That is a pretty
beat
thin...
a very popular Democrat, Ann Richards, a very popular Democrat. So I'm basically saying if he's not some wimpy little kid who never did anything to prove his merit, he got out there, and then he formed a relationship with Democrats to get some things done. This is not an apology for Bush, but it is to say he's a little bit better than the opposition to Russell Crowe in the Gladiator.
No, I'm sorry, but that analogy works for me.
No,
it really does.
It is
and you are an apologist for George Bush. That is the thinnest resume anyone has ever run for president on.
Well, that may be true.
And 6 years in public service? I mean, please.
So what is this, a condemnation of your fellow Americans for the election?
Well, I didn't vote for Gore either. So
I know you voted for Nader.
Yes, I did.
Why?
As a protest, as a party builder.
You threw away your vote.
Yeah, I did. Well, I didn't.
It's your vote to throw away.
I don't think I threw
It's
it
your
away.
vote.
I think what I did was cast a vote for the future instead of this election, which I thought was a losing cause anyway.
Yeah. You did nothing for the future. You did nothing for the future of independence.
Perhaps you're right. But I thought it was important, given the choices I had, to cast a vote for the idea of building a third party. No, Ralph Nader, who I happen to like Ralph a lot, but he and I disagree.
I do too.
A lot, on a lot of stuff.
Right.
But I thought the idea that we finally have more than just two choices, I mean, where else?
Why? What's wrong? Why do we need three parties? If we need three, why don't we need 10?
Because now we only have one, really.
One big centrist party.
Yes, I mean...
So, you know, you're saying like George Wallace. There's not a dime's worth of difference between them.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people who have said that, both on the left and right. But if it's true, it's
Yeah.
true. You know, I always say that the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is that the Republicans are bought by a slightly
How
scarier group of special interests.
Take your political hero, John McCain.
Well, you asked me who's my favorite
No,
Republican.
okay, but is he a favorite political hero or not?
I don't know if he's a hero, but he's...
Okay, someone you. How much difference is there between John McCain, Bill Clinton, George Bush?
On policy?
Yeah.
You know, once they get there, they pretty much do the same
On
things.
foreign policy, on
Yeah.
domestic policy.
It's interesting the way when they're running, they all talk about, I'm going to do this to China, and then the first day in office, you know, they get sat down with the CIA, they take him into a little room, and they explain to him how the world really works, and the guy goes, ooh, well, okay, listen.
You know, and here is what I mean. Bush went to Kosovo and said, "Gee, I didn't know they had so many of those Europeans there." You remember?
Lucky he knew it was in Europe. Yeah, I mean,
I'm no longer, he says, in favor of pulling American troops out. I've changed my campaign position.
Yeah, exactly, because he found out what was going on there. Yeah. It's easy when you're running in a campaign to say those things. I always compare it to, like, when you're in show business, it's so easy for another agent to poach you from the agent you're with, because they can always say to you, really, you didn't go out on that? Oh, that's terrible. You should have. That's, you know what, you'd have been great for that. I could have, you know, it's like, and then the guy go, oh, well, okay.
I could have gotten that for you.
But, you know, once you are in office and you find out now, it's pretty much the same.
Tell me the story about, if you don't want to, it's okay, but Arsenio Hall, which I raised, who came in basically and
yeah, that was weird.
It was weird. He basically said one night, you know, only thing that gets on this show is what Michael Eisner wants to appear on the show.
Which
was the bottom line.
Silliest thing in the world.
Of course it is. And you then said something about, look, you don't understand that this is what I do. And this, I mean, you came back with I thought, a laudatory thing, which was explaining how much the show meant to you.
Yes. And
you know, and I wouldn't let it be corrupted. And
no, I
mean,
wouldn't.
I built this. It means something to me.
It means everything to me. And what really means almost more to me is the connection I have with what I call the 14 percenters, and I call them that because every year ABC does a focus group, as they do on every show, and 14% of the people agree with me most of the time.
Yes.
And it's like, that's how the country is. This is a very conformist nation. Yeah. I think this is a nation of sheep. People really flock toward one idea, one brand, one everything. And there's a small group of people, but it's a big country, so it adds up to millions of them, who don't think like the mainstream. And they really feel like I speak for them. I mean, they tell me this. When I go out, I meet these people. And it's like, it's something it creates a special bond when you are a minority and you are thinking something and nobody else ever says it, and then somebody says it and you go, oh my God, that's right. I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one. Yeah, right. And I think those are my people. That's our fan base. That's what's kept us on for 8.5 years.
I hope I have the same thing out there somewhere, whoever they are, the same sense of community, because you do hear from. One of the great things today is email, because you hear from people every day. You got a ton of email.
I'm not into it, but I hear.
You don't. Oh, you're not. You don't like email. You don't use email.
I don't need it. I don't use it. I wouldn't want it. I would never plug my computer into the outside world. That was too scary.
Oh, this is something that's almost ideological or religious with you.
No, no. I just feel like it's a way they can get into my brain adjunct, and I wouldn't let that happen. And I don't need it. The internet, I think, is overrated. The internet cannot do anything for you that 3 good assistants can.
And you're way underestimating the internet as a tool.
A tool for what?
I promise you. Instant information that you couldn't get in any other way. All kinds of, it can take you places with speed, velocity.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, that you couldn't, and introduce you, and there is an assimilation process that can take place in terms of comparisons, in terms of references, and a whole lot of stuff like that.
You're right.
Now, it may be that this is information that you don't need
or
want. You got enough stuff to do over here.
Exactly.
You don't need more information.
I don't have time to take up skiing either. You know?
Oh, you don't ski either?
No. I'm just
this
picking,
is really
I'm just picking that, but I'm just telling you there are certain things.
Did you ever think about the priesthood?
Well, yes, I thought about it when the priests were whopping on me back in Catholic school. I thought about priests a lot. And
Get out of my life.
It was not good, and I've been doing material on them ever since.
Have you really?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Over the years in my act, I've had a lot of things
How
to
much
say
of your act is politics and how much is other stuff?
It's about half and half. I mean, my act now, the one I'm working on to do my next HBO special, I couldn't even tell you the title on a family show like this. It's about half about pretty much the new Bush administration, everything going on there, and half of it is about really what I would call the feminization of America, and that's the title. The title, again, I can't tell you.
But what do you mean by the feminization of America?
The fact that pretty much all the debate in America has gone away. Men don't enter the debate anymore. Whatever women think is the presiding thought that guides our nation, and we have withdrawn. Men have withdrawn from the debate. I think the reason why is because men never...
Wait a minute. Whatever women think is the decisive
Yeah. I
point
mean,
about. Give me your best
children
example.
are the most important people. They're Christ-like geniuses, much more important than other human beings. We never used to think this way. I mean, women being the life...
thought this way for a long time. I
No.
mean, it may have been more important
Are
a
you
long
kidding?
time ago than it is now.
No, the prevailing thought at the turn of the last century was that children should be seen and not heard.
Well, yes, that's true.
And they should be disciplined, and now there
we
are...
have lost those values?
We
They
have
don't-
lost those values,
We want them
absolutely.
heard and not disciplined.
Right, that's what I don't, especially on a plane.
You want no children?
I have not had children, and I don't foresee having them. No, I'm not interested in children,
At all?
especially. No.
I'll bet you'll change your mind.
That's what women say, and it hasn't happened yet. It could. I'm
Yeah.
not so arrogant as to think I couldn't change, but at this age, it's getting, the time is running out.
The clock is ticking.
But as I always say, if you have a baby, you can't be the baby. That usually convinces a woman not to.
Well, that probably makes you more attractive.
Exactly. But,
But
women being the life givers and the nurturers, that is their nature. I'm not begrudging them holding these kind of opinions. Health over everything. Safety is elevated to a place that is preposterous in this world, that we could actually, basically solve death is the feeling. That commitment is more important than sex. I mean, any of these notions...
that commitment is more important than sex?
Right, things that men don't really agree with, but we just nod along, because men just want to stay out of the doghouse.
Yeah, right.
They are anesthetized with pornography and sports, and they just don't want trouble with the old lady. So they just, I call it making women nod. We're always just making women nod.
Yeah.
If you watch Oprah or any show like that, they cut to the audience a lot, and whoever's the guest on the stage better be saying things that make women nod. I'll give you an example. When Al Gore was pandering his way to the White House, Oprah asked him, what about family? What if it conflicts with your schedule? And he said, well, if there's a family problem, my schedule blows off the page.
Women in the audience said what?
Nodding. Very good, because family comes first. And I'm like, are you kidding? You're the president? You want to be the president? You want my vote, and you're telling me there's a family problem, and you're the leader of the free world? Your schedule goes away? Well, you can't have it that way. You can't be president and then just blow off your schedule.
Well, here's the other question.
Your family does come second when you have a job like that. Sorry.
Well, okay, but at the same time, you balance what the demands of the job are. You don't have to be there in the Oval Office every minute, and you can have some consideration of family. We're not suggesting that if
Can
in
you
fact...
see
Wait a minute,
Winston
finish. Let me,
Churchill?
yes, of course I can.
I can.
You mean Churchill?
Yeah. The Nazis will have to wait.
Because
Yeah, I mean...
Little Randolph has broken
right,
his...
Exactly.
He fell and hurt himself.
I've got to go to soccer practice. I mean, get real.
Saving the world can wait. I've got soccer practice.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what Al Gore was saying.
Or little Randy got a B in class, and so we got to go reprimand him.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that's not what he meant. He meant something like, let's suppose here's the hard example. When he happened to be there, but when his son was very severely hurt at the Baltimore Orioles Stadium, which used to be Memorial and is now what's it called?
Camden Yards.
Camden Yards. You wouldn't have expected him, if he hadn't been there, if he'd been in the Oval Office working on Senate business or vice presidential business, not to immediately come to the bedside of his son, right?
Not unless there was a war beginning at the same time. But yes, of course, the president can find time.
Oh, well, that's my point.
But that's not what he was saying. He was saying family comes first.
No, he was saying. That's
And
what
also,
he was saying.
you know, he was not above using that and his sister's tragedy for political gain, which is one.
Oh, come on.
Well, you don't remember the speech?
Yes, of course I do.
I mean, that is one reason I've always found it hard to warm up to Al Gore.
All right, roll tape. Here is a scene from Politically Incorrect, a recent panel with Alec Baldwin, who discusses why the vice president is not sitting in the Oval Office today.
Look at that.
Al Gore served under Bill Clinton. And when we talk about Clinton fatigue, it's always Al Gore. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why he lost in November, was because of Clinton-Gore fatigue. And I don't see how he overcomes that even in 3 years
the reason
from now.
he lost is that he refused to embrace Clinton's success.
But
he was so afraid.
This is precisely
of the
the reason.
myth of Clinton fatigue.
And he also lost because, let's not forget, because we let this guy off the hook, that wheezing, broken down windbag Nader was running around the country, stealing all those votes.
That's who I voted for.
No, yeah, that's why I said that. That's why I said that as delicately as I did.
You love Alec
Great
Baldwin.
guy. I do. I love Alec Baldwin.
He wants to run for what in New York? Governor, senator?
He's never said that. People say that.
But you don't think he does then?
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying he never said that. I think he could. I think he'd do very well. I think, yeah, someday. I don't think he should do it. Now, I always tell him when I see him, I say, Alec, you know, the world is full of lousy politicians, but you're a really terrific actor, and you entertain me, and, you know, that's what you should do. That's what the world needs you to do right now. Maybe when he's older.
Of all the people you know in the entertainment world, who would make the best president?
Oh, yeah. As an entertainer?
Yeah. Alec Baldwin is an entertainer. Warren Beatty is an entertainer.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was an entertainer.
Don't quarrel. When he was president, actually, the myth is that Ronald Reagan
was an actor.
Wasn't a good actor. Ronald Reagan was a very good actor.
That's exactly right. You know who I know that from? Lou Cannon. Lou Cannon wrote a wonderful book about him called The Role of a Lifetime, the presidency.
He was a good
And he
actor,
said he was a good actor.
and he proved it when he had that great starring role for 8 years as the President of the United States.
But who was it that said about Ronald Reagan? Somebody said about Ronald Reagan, I think it may have been Billy Wilder, but it may have been someone else saying that if he had met Nancy Reagan earlier, he would have won an Academy Award and not become president.
I've never understood the fixation the Republicans have with Ronald Reagan. It's like they're crazy about this guy. I mean, truly insanely crazy. They want him on Mount Rushmore. You know, they want him on a coin. You know,
that's because you don't like Reagan's presidency.
Wait a second.
That's
but even
why
if
you
I
don't,
did, it is monumentally inappropriate to take someone who hasn't even passed away.
You can't compare Ronald Reagan to George Washington?
No, exactly. I mean, these guys sort of stood the test of time. It's like everything Reagan does is remarkable to these people.
Hello,
he's like an 8-year-old child.
No, look what he did. I'm sounding like a Republican, which is not what I want. No. I'm just trying to provoke you.
Well, you're doing a hell of a job.
I'm doing a hell of a job of it.
First you read during breakfast, and you argue with me. This marriage is over.
And so is this segment. Bill Maher, Politically Incorrect, continues, and boy, am I glad about that, and so is he. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure, Charlie. Always good to be here.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
People who pay for inexpensive items with a credit card. You know, folks, take my word for this. Raisinets is not a major purchase. Get in cash together. No one should be paying a bank 18% interest on Tic Tacs. And you're holding up in line, too. Some dorky-looking prick with a fanny pack waiting to be approved for a bag of cheese doodles. Next guy ahead of me online pays for Newsweek with a credit card is getting stabbed in the eyes.
That's funny. Bill Maher is also funny as our next guest, comic best-selling author, host of HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, which returns August 22nd, and producer and star of the upcoming documentary that I'll bet George Carlin would have loved, Religulous. How did you react when you heard this?
Shocked. I guess I shouldn't have been because I know he was in failing health, but he was so immortal to me. I still cannot hardly believe it. But I was, you know, they showed my last HBO special last night. which seemed odd. I didn't think about it at the time, but when I got up this morning, I was like, because it's a year old. So why would they be showing a special that's a year? Once in a while they rerun them, but it just struck me as spooky that there it was. I watched a few minutes of it just to see if it was holding up, because material sometimes dates from a year ago. And that's the first thing I thought was, whoa. And also, I had been talking about George Carlin in every interview I've done lately because people are talking about the movie. Because it comes out in October. We're starting to do interviews. And I wanted to make sure to always give George his credit as the guy. The only guy who talked about religion before, where I got my courage to do it.
Why did he upset so many people?
Well, that's one reason why. He just didn't care who he upset, especially the older he got. Not that he was ever timid, but I loved him. The older he got, he just more and more was like, I'm old. No one can say anything to an
What are you going to do to me?
What are you going to do to me? He would go after, poor people, fat people, just the average American. He had this disdain, and he didn't hide it.
Speaking of religion, Bill Maher is going to have a movie coming in October. As we told you, Religulous. Here's George Carlin with a couple of words about religion.
Well, atheism is a belief, so I'm not an atheist, because that's something you have to believe.
It also makes a definitive statement. There is no... What are you, an agnostic?
Somebody would define me that way, but I don't think it's important to know the distinction. I'm just a person who thinks someday you could find out, and I would know that whoever was there judging me, and I'm sure there's no one like that, but if there was someone judging me, then I'd be fine. So I don't even think about where, when my brother calls it the big electron. Just the big electron. Something is humming. So all you need is a good hum. A good hum. I don't mean, the bad kind. Just a good hum. Yeah. And so I think Jesus probably lived. He's probably an alive guy. But I got an interview with him in my book, by the way. You want to read that. Because he tells everything. They ask him, is there a heaven? He says, not only is there a heaven, we got a heck. Heck and hell. Heck,
heaven, heck, and hell.
And
what's heck?
Heck is not as bad as hell. It's similar.
I bet you if he was here now, what he would be saying is, why do people say nice things when you die? That's the stupidest thing to do. They can't hear you. He would be the one guy who would be taking issue with us all heaping praise upon him just because I'm dead.
Was he, in a sense, a role model to you, Bill? What did he
more than anyone. More than any, absolutely. And look, I've said this many times. When I was a kid starting out, there was not many young comedians, hip comedians. You were saying right before we went on the air, you said you're too young to remember Carlin on Ed Sullivan.
Lenny Bruce had a major effect on Carlin.
I miss Lenny Bruce. And I still don't listen to him. I don't find him funny. I find him groundbreaking, and I think he paved the way for a lot of people, including myself. But George Carlin was funny, like laugh out loud, hurt your gut kind of funny. And when I was a kid looking at comedy for the first time, George Carlin, when we first saw him, was on Ed Sullivan with a skinny tie. You remember that, George Carlin. He was the clean-cut guy with clean material. Then he put out an album in 1971 called AM and FM. AM was the A side of the album. That was the old George Carlin, clean suit. FM was the new George Carlin. Long hair, T-shirt, hippie, dirty material.
There's the young George.
Yes. This was, to someone like me, this was the Holy Grail. This was the guy saying, I've shed that skin. I'm not the old clean guy. I'm going to take this in a different direction. This is why this man is, to me, on the top of the mountain, because he's the most fearless, and he changed where comedy went.
Here's George on those 7 dirty words you can't say on television. Watch.
I decided I would take a look at which ones you could never say. Because some of them you could say, like bitch. You could talk about a dog. You could say, well, the bitch is in this litter, the bitch, and so forth. Or you could say bastard. William the Conqueror was a bastard. But certain words, never. Right. And I wanted to know what they were. And I figured out the 7 of them. And I threw them out in a nice package. And they had rhythm. It had a rhythm to it.
And radio stations couldn't play it.
Radio stations, some did play it. And what happened was a station in New York played it. And the FCC, one complaint, New York City, probably 25 million radios. 25 million radios. One complaint, a professional moralist, a guy from Morals in Media, with his son in the car, and he let the son listen. Apparently they were not morally corrupted by this act. And in 1978, the Supreme Court said 5-4. These words were indecent. They made up a whole new category of filth for me. Wasn't obscene, indecent. And they said you can't play it when kids might listen.
That's the rule. After 10 o'clock at night, you can play it. Steve Martin had this to say: George Carlin has been a major force in comedy since the 1960s. There'll be no substitute for his insight, nor his tireless and hilarious attacks on the enfranchised. No matter how angry and affronted he was, he never forgot to be funny. George Carlin was a comedy hero. More Bill Maher, more laughs ahead as our tribute to George Carlin continues.
That's all your house is? It's a place to keep your stuff while you go out and get more stuff. Now, sometimes you've got to move. You got to get a bigger house. Why? Too much stuff. Did you ever notice when you go to somebody else's house, you never quite feel 100% at home? You know why? No room for your stuff. Somebody else's stuff is all over the place. And what awful stuff it is. Have you noticed that their stuff is and your is stuff?
Bill Maher is our guest. Where do you put him in the picture of comedy? In other words,
I'm telling you, for me, there's nobody higher. Because, look, there's many ways to get a laugh. To me, this is the highest way because it's also saying something. If you took the jokes out of his act, it would still be a very interesting speech that made you think. Lots of laugh getters.
He could be a lecturer.
You know, it's just about the laugh. It's a confection. It's an ice cream cone. You forget it as soon as you leave the building. Not him. I mean, this stuff stays with us. That routine you were just playing. He was the best of anybody about skewering America on its materialism. He loved to get into that subject. And he was so right, because that's what the country is.
Here he is, guesting with us in 1997. Insight into a great man. Watch.
I don't buy the whole humanity thing. I don't buy the species. I don't believe in my species. I don't believe in my country. I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in government. I don't believe in big business. I think it's a game. I think it's a racket and a game and a con. And I enjoy not caring about things because it gives me a detachment, gives me a separation. And I see a lot of political comics, you know, they seem to believe that there's hope, if only we do this. I don't believe that.
You believe there's no hope?
I really think there isn't. I think we're so attached to goods, to buying things, to having things, to acquiring, to get a better job, 2 incomes. Now they have volunteerism. Not only do they have people working 2 jobs, they want you to go do